Welcome to volume 1.3 of Solo Drills in the Grappler's Toolbox, entitled Ground Engagement. As was alluded to in joint articulation and strength, the primary role of biomechanical efficiency is to cause a specific adaptation to imposed demands, SAID. The more complex exercises that are found in ground engagement will force you to adopt an increasingly more economical usage of your bioenergetic potential. Therefore, your primary performance goal should not be failed effort, but adapted efficiency. You've already met Benjamin Brackbill in the last volume, Joint Articulation and Strength. Allow me to introduce you to Scott Fable, another one of the senior trainers at RMAX. We are going to be equally distributing the responsibility of ground engagement. Reason for this being, there are various themes that we're going to be approaching throughout the exercises in ground engagement. Each of us has our own idiosyncratic pattern. Each of us has our own flavor to our movement. Now, although we all derive our same motoric program from this organism, each of us has to reclaim and reveal our natural talents. That talent will be different for Scott, for me, for Ben, for you. And what's going to be important is that you see that those idiosyncratic patterns, that unique flair that you have, will be drawn out the more that you can see the variations possible within these exercises.
Hopefully many of you already are familiar with the squat that you learned from the first Grappler's Toolbox videotape. If you remember, our position number 1, we had balanced our weight over top of our heels, keeping our full alignment all the way down. Take a side view look at that as well. Both of your legs are going to be out at a 45-degree angle, and again, you're going to keep excellent alignment through this. This was our basic position that we started with. From there, we also went on to joint articulation and strength in the second videotape, and we covered things like strength in our ankles, which we're also getting from this exercise, as well as the articulation in our pelvis. I want to take this one exercise and show you how you can use it to articulate your pelvis a little bit more while navigating across the ground. First thing, I'm going to give you a side view of this. If you remember in the second tape, our pelvis articulates very, very easily the more you work at this. If you stay nice and buoyant and balanced over top of your legs, you're going to be able to use your pelvis to propel you to move across the mat. So from here, I'm going to rock in my pelvis and not hop, but instead use my pelvis to propel me to the other side of the mat. And we'll come back around. And again, not hopping and using all of the muscles in our legs, but instead using our tendons and ligaments, especially in our pelvis, rock into this to cover some distance on the ground. So that's an excellent way to gain additional strength here in the ankles, as well as the articulation in the pelvis. Part of this rocking motion also can be used to move in other ways. For example, everyone remembers the frog leap from the very first video. We came down, our arms and legs formed a square. Again, we'll do that from the side. Arms and legs in a square, nice and buoyant. If you take that pelvic tilt that we did earlier and you add it to the frog leap, you're going to be able to move from one position on the ground to an upper position. So from here, we'll come down, and now by twisting and tilting our pelvis, we're going to replace our hands with our legs. So here to here, back down and back up. Very easily moving from one position to the other. If you remember from the first tape, if you're already here in this position, you're also standing. So quickly you can move from a squat, all fours, back to a squat, and standing. What I'd like you to do is work on that same thing, except this time, instead of having your hands out to your sides, put them in front of you. I'm going to try and make a small triangle about where my chest would be, and come down very lightly. What I want to do is, once I have my hands on the floor in that triangle position, I'm going to bring my chest over top of my hands and let my legs slide out behind me. When you're doing that, you're supporting all the weight of your body over top of your hands. So again, you're going to lean into this, put all of your weight over top of your hands, and slide your legs back. Make sure you turn your head to the side so that you don't wind up hitting into the mat. Once you're down here, to get back up, arch your back, bring your knees up to where your elbows are, and you're right back to that initial squat. This particular exercise can be done from many different levels as well. All we're doing at this point is engaging the ground. This is a very easy way to get onto the ground. We remember from here, the squat. All we have to do is put our hands in front of us, right about where our chest is. We're going to go right down and put our legs out behind us. And come back up. If we were to start here at a crouch position, it's no different. From here, we're just moving straight down. So from a crouch position, hands will go straight down in front of us, legs will go about behind. A couple of things I want to point out as you go through this. Most importantly, as I said, don't forget to turn your head to the side so that you don't face plant right into the mat. Secondly, your legs are going to go out at about a 45-degree angle. If we watch this again, as it comes down, my legs are going to go out. This is going to help disperse the weight a little bit and disperse the impact as we engage the ground. Additionally, only my toes and my hands are going to be touching the mat. So from our crouch, come down, hands on the mat, and back. Only my toes and my hands are touching the mat. When I'm ready to get up, relax my body down, pinch in the elbows and arch up, and bring your knees into your elbows, and you're back to standing. Once you're at a standing, then of course, you can go all the way down, because standing is no different than a crouch, which is no different than a squat. The only thing that I want to add to the standing is to articulate your body a little bit more as you go through the mechanics. And we'll start with the shoulders. In the second videotape, you saw the circles that you can do with your shoulders. These circles are going to be very important for this beginning motion to engage the ground. We're going to circle back. Now, as I start to do that, not only are my shoulders getting involved, but my entire arm is going to start to move. As my whole arm starts to move, so does my torso. I'm going to expand out my chest. And there's the pelvic tilt that we worked on to start. So back, pelvic tilt, legs are going to come out, and we're right back down to where we began. Lean our weight into it, and legs go back. Now if we do that all at one time, you'll see that you bring these back and down all in one motion. And you're right down. And again, only those 2 points are going to be hitting your feet and your hands. That's going to be the first standing ground engagement to the front. Now, a lot of times we don't have the luxury of going straight down where we're at. We may need to get to the ground in some other fashion. But the end position is going to be the same regardless of where we start. Here we're starting and going straight down. We're going to end up here. Essentially, my belt has gone to where my feet were. Straight down. Now, additionally, we can go down to gain a little bit of distance instead of collapsing in on ourselves. The end position is going to be identical. However, we're going to start a little bit different, and it's going to require you to articulate your body as much as you can. If you've ever gone to an airport and watched the airplanes come in, you'll see that they don't just come in and land. They come in very, very softly to the ground. And we're going to do that same thing as we go forward to engage the ground. To help, remember, your hands are going to be about where your chest is. and you want them turned in at a 45-degree angle. I kind of see it as a triangle there. That's where they should end up. If you try to reach, your hands are going to be out way too far by the time you land. So instead, we're going to keep them in, and we're going to engage the ground forward by putting our hands down about where our chest is going to land, and we're going to come in nice and slow here. Now, if you look at this position, it's the same that it had started out with when we started with the ground. Only the feet are on the ground and the hands. So we'll do that again. Here, we're going to reach down in front of us. Nice and gently, the body will articulate down. Nice and buoyant right there. As you can imagine, as you move on through this, you can gain a lot more distance than what we're doing right now. We can actually start to gain distance as we engage the ground instead of staying in place or taking small steps. This doesn't require any supernatural skill either. We're not going to fly through the air to land. Instead, we're going to give ourselves a bit of a boost from the pelvis. So we're going to start with that pelvic tilt that we looked at earlier. The pelvis is going to help propel us forward. Now again, we don't want to reach out with our hands, and we certainly don't want to stop ourselves. Automatically, we have a desire to stop ourselves from hitting the ground. As our hands go down, they're just going to help slow us down. They're not stopping us. When they hit also, we don't want to hit right at the bottom of our hand where it meets the wrist. That's going to send a lot of trauma up the arms. Instead, we start at about the fingertips, and we let that dissipate all the way down. That's going to be very important for this next ground engagement. From here, we're still going to be putting our hands in at about a 45-degree angle, moving with our pelvis, and we're just going to reach out very, very slightly and take a bit of a hop. For this third variation, though, notice that the hands and the feet are in the exact same position that they were for the first two. So this has not changed at all. Arch your back, bring your knees up to your elbows, and you're right back to standing. Do that one more time. From here, and we're going to start this with our pelvis. Hands are going to come out in front of us. This is going to propel us forward just a little bit, and we'll gain some distance. If you remember back from the first tape, you can see where this may actually lead us to. And I even alluded to it earlier in this segment. As you continue to hop, we're turning this into our frog leap. You remember from that tape, the motion is elliptical. And as you continue in your ellipse, you're going to propel yourself forward. Same thing can happen as you go backwards. You have a backwards ellipse that propels you backwards. So from a standing position, you can get into any of those ground engagements and continue movement, whether it's the leg threading that you've done, or doing the frog leaps here, or some other things we're going to work on through the rest of this tape. One last thing I want to mention. This position should be very comfortable to you. So hopefully you've been working on that from the first tape. But how do we move from that position itself? We kind of saw a little bit of it when Ben had shown us some stretching in the second tape. Here. If we take that just a step further, we can actually make a 90-degree turn. If we continue through, one leg and one hand, we made 180 degrees, and we're in the opposite direction. 90 degrees here, 180 degrees back. Still in that square. That's the first set of ground engagement. As we move on through subsequent sets, we're going to look at more ways to engage the ground, as well as continue to support our tendon and ligament strength.
Okay, as we just saw with Scott Fable, we're going to be working on getting to the ground. Now, he was taking us through going down head first, coming down like an airplane. What we're going to be doing now is spiraling up, spiraling down. Okay? To do that, we're going to start with the basics. You already know that there's no difference between standing and squatting. Okay? We're going to work on this, refine it just a little more. We already worked on our pelvis mobility here. We're going to take that into our squat. So our pelvis is going to come back and down and up. Back and down, back and up. This is less effort. You're utilizing more joints, your hips, your knees, your ankles, your shoulders, your back, instead of just knees and hips. Here. Down and up. Down and up. Okay? Now, that was moving to this squatting position. Now we're going to move to this squatting position. Instead of just legs out and down, we're going to root ourselves as we go down. So first we'll work on coming up. From here, remember, knees are coming out, 45-degree angles, out here. We're going to screw in. Each leg is going to spiral in, and it's going to propel our body up here. Okay? So from here, reverse the process, spiral down, root yourself, grab your toes into the ground. Here, here, here. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start spiraling down with the entire body, crossing the legs over. So, starting with your feet about shoulder width apart, knees nice and loose. You want to keep your body buoyant the whole time. You don't want to be stiff. Remember, be buoyant, breathe the entire time you're doing this. Take your foot, put it across. Okay? From here, take your foot. Now you're going to, again, spiral one leg, spiral the other leg. Down. Okay? So, again, foot across, and you're going to spiral your entire body down into the ground. Here to here. Okay? Now, to get back up, we're here. Put the leg across again, and spiral up. Okay? So, we have spiraling the legs out, down into this first position, position 1. Spiraling the legs up, here, just standing. There should not be a distinction between standing and squatting. You're still balanced on your feet, your torso is still upright. It's just the legs that have moved. You should not have a distinction or any sort of fear between moving from this position down to this position or from here back up. If you have hesitancy or fear from moving up and down, you're not going to have access to your techniques, to your skill base. You need to be able to move up and down from standing to squatting, from standing to laying on the ground with ease and without any sort of fear or fright. When that happens, your skill base is lost. So from here to here, back up, and the first one we did, hips are coming back and down. Then the hips rock back and back up. Okay? So now, let's just take this spiraling, and we're going to continue to spiral while we're on the ground. Okay? So, we're going to rock our weight onto one leg here and shoot through. Okay? Rocking the weight onto one leg. The other leg is now free. Shoot through. Spiral your legs and you're back up. Okay? So I'll do this down this way and come back so that you can get a visual for how it looks. Okay? As you're doing this for the first time, use your arms as training wheels. Okay, take it slow. Foot comes through. Spiral into your squat. Foot comes through. Spiral into your squat. Okay? Spiraling, spiraling. Okay, now, we're going to take that and we're going to kind of like a wave, bob up and down as we move. Okay? So from here, legs are going to cross over. We already did this. Here, down. Here, and up. Okay. So, now let's go over this again. We have our squatting, spiraling the legs out, here, and back up. We have our turning as we're going down. We have that same thing up and down. Here, 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 to here. Okay? Now we're going to extend this motion here. We're going to let this leg continue all the way out, similar to this stretch from the previous tape. Except instead of the body coming up, we're going to collapse down. Leg's going to come through. We're going to collapse. Hands are going to be pointed in at each other, 45-degree angles. Here. Leg comes out. Breathe out. If you don't breathe out, you're not going to be able to move. You need to breathe out so that your body can move. If the air is trapped in there, there's no mobility. So from here, now, in the last segment, we worked on pinching the elbows in. Here. Don't move from this position to a push-up. Involve the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, and the spine. Here. More joints, more efficient movement, the less energy you're expending, the longer you can go. Okay? From here. Okay. Now we're going to pinch our elbows in and come back up. And to the other side. Up. To the other side. Up. Now, on your own, slowly increase the speed, but more importantly, smooth out the rough edges. If you try and do this just by pressing here, your arms are going to fatigue fast. Screw the elbows. Screw them in. Now we're going to do the same thing, but change it just a little bit. Instead of the leg coming through the front, here, we're now going to come through the back. Okay? So, again, through and through. Okay. As you're working on that, don't try and increase the speed. Try and smooth out the rough edges. So those two, again, I'll show them again. We're switching our legs back and forth. Here. Same thing with the leg behind. Now, we're going to start from this squatting position again. We're going to turn. We're going to breathe out. Turn. Okay. Hands are going down by the foot. So from the squat position, this time our legs are going to come out into this position. Now, what you want to avoid when your legs are down here is putting a joint on top of a joint. You don't want your knees to be on top of each other because then that's bone on bone. You want soft tissue on soft tissue. So the calf muscles on top of the calf muscles, or up here, calf on the thigh. Okay. Okay. So once again, turn, Breathe out. We'll do that from standing. Remember, there's no difference between standing and squatting. Just a change in level. So we're coming down and turning. Back up. On the other side, coming down, turning.
What I'm going to do now is take some of the components that Scott and Ben introduced to us and combine those with previous motor sets that were introduced in the initial volume of Grappler's Toolbox. First is going to be a review of the rear ground engagement. Now, like Scott introduced to us, shoulders lead, breathing, pelvic tilt. Slide. We come from the shin box and slide into our base. Same thing. We already recovered this motion, and we worked on this in the first tape. What we're going to do is we're going to combine this with the spinal rock, couple those two exercises together, and shoot our leg through that Ben introduced to us in a few of the stretches and a few of the biomechanics. That being, as this escapes, we're going to replace and distribute the ground engagement between two retreating levers from here into the spinal rock. When you come back up, I want you to work on shifting your shin box, switching so that you can elevate with a shin roll right away. Review this again. Distributing two sliding levers. Arch. And back up. If you do this slowly, it's nearly impossible. Remember that Ben showed us in joint articulation and strength, this balance exercise. And Scott was speaking of the position that we needed to assume. Ben introduced to us how to use our entire body to facilitate a disengagement of the ground. Combined and coupled together, you can use the torque of your own body to propel you. It needs to be a split decision between those two retreating levers. One last time. This comes out. You're starting already, I'm sure, to see where the ability to take your lever and place it under another is going to be integral, but it has to be a smooth engagement of the ground and disengagement. We're going to take that retreating lever and apply it in a different exercise in a similar motion. Beginning with this number one position, what I want you to do is adopt the position that Ben had introduced to us when we were in joint articulation and strength. You're out at a 45-degree angle to your pelvis. Your weight distribution is over top of this post. Okay? Take the leg, and we're going to move it directly in front of us, and we're going to continue shifting even further, and you remember this exercise. Step over. You remember this exercise. Now watch. The point here is to roll over the pelvis back into the position that we were just introduced to, and bring the leg back to the original position. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Back to start. Looks familiar. Broken down into components of stored elastic energy like we spoke of in the initial volume of Grappler's Toolbox. This is not a muscular activity. We know that we're not using the muscles to press up here. We're loading the tendons through screwing. So this becomes a buoyant exercise. This is going to become an important element when we start tying that to the first exercise I just introduced of carefully engaging the ground in a circular motion. The leg swings around, leg slides out instead of shooting straight out. The engagement is much more rapid because we're distributing it on a spiral instead of a linear pattern. We're going to be moving into some complex motor sets, so it's going to be required that Ben assists me in demonstrating while I narrate. First, Ben's going to remind us of an exercise from the first volume, and that being the arm screw up. It's not a press up. We're not using the major muscle groups to force us and oppose gravity. We're screwing by recruiting joints. Ben's going to roll over onto his back with a nice little leg thread and start from this spread eagle position. And notice the angle of his arms and legs are matching. Now, as Ben rolls across his back, he's going to be engaging the ground from fingertip to fingertip, rolling along the shoulder blades and down the length of each arm. This initial exercise is going to be important for the mat sensitivity, the kinesthetic awareness. It's going to be critical for some of the more complex acrobatics that we'll be doing in ground engagement. And notice that as he engages from the first joint, the rotational value of his body is accelerated. He's creating inertia by recruiting joints. What he's going to be doing next is pulling into this the rotation of the forearm that we just did with the press up. He's screwing the arm. This is absorbing the force coming downward, and it's storing and releasing elastic energy. Remember that from the first tape, SEE, stored elastic energy. Now what Ben's going to do is we're going to come up to another level. We'll come up to a crouch instead of a squat. Just one more level. You remember the rear ground engagement. Can you review that one time? Shin box into a slide. Fair enough. We're going to do the same thing, but now we're going to recapture that and add into it that rotational value in the forearm and upper arm, so that as we reach back, we're collapsing and absorbing through our joint rotation the impact to the ground. This is what we mean by joint recruitment. And we recaptured this in joint articulation and strength. Now we're starting to compose this into the elementary motor sets that we had introduced in the first volume. Okay. We're going to be going on. Ben's going to come down into that crouch position again. And he's going to grab a hold of his ankles, come down to his rump, and we're going to be doing a more complex roll because it's tighter. In that, as he rolls, just the basic roll is now across the shoulder blades. Now you remember this roll from the first tape where the high leg came over? Not the low leg, but the high leg. Ben's now using that as an impetus to increase this circular roll across his back. He's coming up and pushing. This is gaining the inertia to come around for the next round. Fair enough. Now, thank you. What we're going to do is we're going to take that, and you remember the neck roll exercise that we did in the initial tape of you couple that with the ground engagement that Ben just had us work on, and the ability to roll from joint articulation and strength. Slowly, if you engage the ground with the shin roll, your arms come underneath, across the shoulder blades. And we're right back into this base, position number 3. Do it again. Shin roll, arm slides, posts, roll, and we're right back up. You're going to be heavy on the rewind button on this one. I'm not going to hit this too many times because it's going to take you practicing this. Shin roll. Arm through and post. Let the legs carry out in front. Position number 3. What we're going to do next, I'm going to get a bit more mobile than this isolated area. We're going to be taking some of the exercises from the first tape and combining those with some that we're introducing now, beginning with one of your favorites, the ape step.
And we're going to add into that this exercise that we just began, and that being this rule here. The ability to negotiate the mat with one controlled fluid motion
is prerequisite for our ability to have three-dimensional kinesthetic sense. You remember this new complex component that was added in joint articulation and strength? The screwing arms. Do you remember the first ground engagement that we worked on in volume 1? Do you remember this? If you add into this full screwing rotation, what you're doing is, with every new joint that you recruit, you're increasing the efficiency of your motion. This is just like Ben introduced. If each new joint that is recruited into the activity, less muscular effort is involved, and you're exponentially increasing the SEE, stored elastic energy. So, just like before, screw the arm over, take it to a crouch, take it to standing, so that this becomes effortless. In a moment, we're going to introduce another roll, but this one will be new. An important concept that we discussed in the first tape is the appreciation for not rolling over, but rolling under. The ability to collapse, to take out the foundation so that you can contort upon your own body. And we discussed that in particular with the spinal rock. Some of you are already familiar with rolling along this arm. Some aren't. But this is an important component in that this arm needs to go long. You're rolling under your own body. Now, we came out here. We came out here. In this third position, when we post and reach, the body rolls over itself. Remember this position? The third position? Reaching long, exposing the shoulder blades. Do you remember adding in the neck roll? Reach long. Second variation. It's a shorter route, but it's taking into consideration these elementary motor components that we've been discussing. Rolling under, not rolling over. When you take that up to a higher level, when you're coming underneath your own body, you're not vaulting, but self-collapsing. It's a shorter route to the ground. A much more efficient means than vaulting and trying to roll over your own arm. If you need to vault, we're going to go back to this outside method 1 roll that we worked on with screwing arms. Method 1, to vault. If your arms come forward to negotiate the mat, you're going to start to angle out and distribute the force so that we can access our back. If we're rolling in place, understanding how to negotiate the mat depends on the appreciation of amplitude, dimension, and frame. We're going to go on to this in just another moment. We saved the final 2 complex motor sets for a particular reason. We've worked on here in this ground engagement. We've worked on here as well as here. There's only one more direction that we haven't covered in our ability to negotiate the mat and engage the ground, and that is here. Now this is going to be a rather challenging endeavor because of the fear reactivity that's attached to it. When working this exercise, you have to reach and stretch as much as possible so that you're going to access the soft tissues. When you vault through this, it can't be lukewarm. You have to work on the prior exercises so that when you attempt this on a soft surface to begin with initially, or a hard surface if you want instant biofeedback, reach. Now, I advise you to go very slowly. I don't care how young you are, how virile you are. These will be felt in the morning if you do them incorrectly, so I want you to go incremental in your attempts. Try one. Look at the range of motion in reaching and screwing the arm from here. When you do so, the body's going to continue over the soft tissue. As the roll happens, it has to lengthen out the body. There's a very important component in loading the pelvis and reaching. Reaching as far as possible so that you're creating the plane that Ben introduced to us in this spread eagle position. But now, across the body. So reach and vault and lengthen your arm out like you're trying to spear somebody with your sword. As long as possible. What I want you to do is take this same exercise. And the last ground engagement we're going to cover is from this position. The fastest way to engage the ground is to take out the foundation. This may appear to be the simplest activity that we've done so far, but it has the most amount of joints involved in collapsing down to the ground. Splitting, retreating levers, both winding into position. Thus, we've concluded this aspect of solo grappling drills of the Grappler's Toolbox. What we'll be going on to in the future is how to relate those exercises in partner grappling drills and team grappling drills. Take care. Train hard.